I was telling Fabian just before getting on the panel that most of my research is quite depressing, because when you do research on surveillance, it's such a massive battle that we seem to be losing. There's small victories, but we seem to be losing, and I fear that after today, the challenge to our field of work will be even greater. So I didn't want to contribute to the pessimism by just telling you about how bad things are. And so I chose to talk to you about data doubles, because it's one aspect that I work on where there's a bit of pessimism and there's a bit of fear of what's happening, but there's also hope, because there's room for empowerment. And so bear with me, because the beginning is going to be the fear part, but then I hope to give you possibilities for empowerment at the very end. And I wanted to start by talking to you about how surveilled we are. I understand that all of you here have some kind of relationship with the things that the conference is about. This idea of every step you take, the song by the Police, I'll be watching you. Is the Police or Sting alone? I don't know. But anyway, this idea of I'll be watching you and the possibility of that actually happening. And so we put together an exhibition a couple of years ago called Big Bang Data in Barcelona, which is now touring the world. And one of the things that I was asked to do was to map the amount of sensors that gather our information in our everyday life. And it was pretty amazing, because even people that were very familiar with surveillance did not have a picture of what that meant. And so that is the picture that we came up with. We drew, well, someone drew, I'm not really good at drawing. So someone drew, Olga drew a street, and I pointed to her all the red spots of places where surveillance is taking place, where our personal information or information relating to us is being gathered. And so you have the Google car here at the beginning, but also the CCTV cameras on an ATM telling machine. You have the cameras for policing or for commercial purposes. You may have drones increasingly, but you also have like parking sensors, underground sensors. You have smart lamps, smart lampposts that can provide wireless, but can also gather information not only on persons, but also on the environment. You also have, we have that a lot in Barcelona where I live, smart bus stops that get analytics on everyone who's standing waiting for a bus. They get information not only through your phone, but also on where your basically your weight is, and so they can see how many people are waiting in the perimeter of the bus stop. And there's the big antennas that gather all the information, and so that was in itself, that was quite a lot. But then we realized that public space is not the only place that is becoming increasingly surveilled. And so we drew this part here on the left, which is supposed to be like a building that you can see through, a transparent building. And you can see some more intimate spaces like a house. Do you think you're being surveilled when you're at home? If you ask this to most people, they'll say, well, yes, of course, through my phone. Well, not only. You might have CCTV in your house. There's really cool gadgets. There's this awful Kickstarter campaign going on right now with a small owl that looks super cute, and it's this CCTV camera that you can put in the room where your children sleep, where your partner does things. I mean, you can put it anywhere, and it looks so beautiful that the guy just went over like 3 times what his target was, because it's just such a cute surveillance device. So even in your house, you can be incredibly surveilled, but not only by devices that you install yourself, but also by devices that you have no idea can survey you. I guess some of you heard about the huge controversy around Samsung smart TVs that happened just a few weeks ago. Let me go back to your phone for a second. If you have an Android, the Android has a functionality that if you say, okay, Google, if you use a Google browser, it will understand what you're saying, and you can direct your phone using your voice, right? You've seen the OK Google sign. You probably not use it, but you see it. The only way that this browser can know whether you're saying OK Google, it's because it's listening to you all the time. There's no way the device can recognize what you're saying unless everything you say is being picked up maybe not recorded, maybe not stored forever, but everything you say has to be picked up. So if you have the same thing on a television, and smart televisions have similar functionalities, what does that mean? That your while you watch your television, your smart television is watching you. And so there was this incredibly naive line in the instructions of Samsung smart TVs saying, be careful what you say in front of your computer because it may be recorded. Which is like, okay, how can I be careful what I say in my bedroom? It's not only about words, there's other noises that may reveal what you're doing. And so it was a huge controversy, but that's what it is. Smart televisions study you as you are watching them. All smart devices do the same thing. They work on looking at you. And so even when you're home, you might not be aware that you've installed any surveillance device, but you may have surveillance devices. The same goes for the Xbox, the Sony console to play games. I don't play games, so I don't know much about that. But it also has Wi-Fi connectivity, and therefore it can watch you as you play with the device. So this intimate space that where you might assume, well, if I leave my phone out, if I turn off my phone, I'm free from surveillance. Well, that is not the case. But that's also not the case at work. You might have surveillance cameras at work. You might have to use your fingerprint to enter your place of work, to clock in and out. There's more and more workspaces that use that kind of thing. There's lots of office devices that are also connected to the internet and therefore can store the information. If you have a photocopying machine or a printing machine, it has a hard device that stores everything that is printed or copied. And oftentimes when people destroy their files, they forget about this device inside their printing machines that has the whole history of every single document that's gone through them. So again, surveillance that could be used later on to know what you were doing later on or in real time. We also chose to depict an image of the entrance of a public transport. When you go inside a metro, I don't know how it is here with the buses, if you have trams, but in more and more cities in the EU, you use smart cards, RFID-enabled smart cards that allow you to pay for that single trip. You might have access to special pricing because of that. And that, it could give you convenience, but it also means that your name and your credit card data and your address are linked to that specific trip that you make. Therefore, someone at some point could find out where you went and when you went there. And again, there's CCTV being the main thing that follows us throughout. And the fourth intimate space that we chose to draw was a supermarket or any shop with the fidelity cards, or the cards that make you into a loyal customer, by which you get 2 cents off on the chicken in exchange for all your data on everything that you shop. And we've had news of people, the algorithms finding out on the basis of what you shop that you may be pregnant, and people getting advertising in their home about their pregnancy before their parents or relatives knew that they were pregnant. I mean, things like these do happen. It's not just some kind of sci-fi risk, but it's an actual possibility that these machines end up knowing more about you than you know yourself, or end up knowing more about you and revealing it to others that you would not choose to share with others. So that's quite scary. The volume of red dots, the amount of moments, points where our personal data or data linked to us is being collected and used. And there's 2 main uses for that data: commercial and policing. And one of the things that we know now, thanks to Snowden, we feared before, but we didn't have proof, now we have proof, is that all commercial and private data can be policing data. Any private entity that collects personal data is obliged to turn it over to the police if there is a request. Therefore, in practical terms, there isn't a real difference between commercial and private and public data. However, there's a difference in what they want to do with that data. Police are usually interested in you, in one individual. For most private gatherers of data or commercial data used for commercial purposes, you're not so much the object.
They want to know you only to know which profile to put you in. And the more they know about you, the more they can decide what kind of ads you need to get. But it's not really about you, it's about your buying power or your consumer profile or your shopping history. But so you with your individual name does not matter so much. But basically, what happens with all this data? Where does it go? Where does it end up? I'm happy to report that most of it ends up nowhere. It just becomes a massive liability for companies that have to store these massive amounts of data in the hope that at some point it'll be very valuable. So there's this hope that data will become the oil of the 21st century. It's not that yet, but we're in a process of primitive accumulation of data in the hope that this will be really valuable in the future. But for most actors involved in data mining, data is not profitable yet. It's just there's a promise of profit. So most of this data is just sitting in the cloud that we saw is nothing but the cloud, in very physical clouds, in very physical servers, just waiting for it to have some commercial value. But most of it, some of it does get processed. And here's where the algorithms kick in. I guess you're all familiar with the notion of an algorithm. It's just a formula that gets your the interesting bits of information in your personal data and use that to assign you, as I said, to a different profile. Once you've been given a profile, and I'll talk about this more later, the data brokers kick in. And you've heard about Google and Facebook and Apple. These are mainly data miners. They get the data. But there's huge companies whose names you don't know that are managing that data, repackaging, sharing it and matching it between different databases and reselling it to other customers. Just one of these companies, Axiom, the biggest one, has over 500 million people identified in their databases in over 150 countries. These are the people that are making money out of data as we speak. But it's only a handful of companies that have actually managed to make money on the basis of gathering your data and matching it with several databases. What's the goal of this? Why do companies buy these repackaged and resold data? Well, it's mostly for a business intelligence, to get to know your customers, get to know the market where you want to break in, to increase your revenue, to provide better services so that you can get higher premiums, etc. And what's the value of that? What data brokers do is get together different databases. So just my bank might have information about me. My bank will know how much I make every month, how much I withdraw, where I travel to, because I have to use my credit card to pay for things. And that is really valuable. But if you could mix that data, bank data, with insurance data, for instance, then you probably get a better risk assessment, but also you could get differential pricing. So I want to opt for an insurance on my house. If my insurance company knows that I'm wealthy, they might choose to charge me more or to charge me less, assuming that being wealthy, I'll take better care of my stuff. But basically, they can adapt the price to my profile and make decisions on the basis of this. And so the data brokers will get your bank data and your insurance data and sell it to a third party that is interested in getting this data together and doing something with it. Something good or something bad. And I mean bad in terms of affecting your privacy or making you pay a higher premium for a service. The same goes for health data. My doctor knows what my problems are, and that is a very private thing, but it's also a very informative thing. Several actors around me might be interested in knowing how healthy I am. An employer might want to know how healthy I am. My private insurer, if I have one, I don't, but if I had one, my private insurer would be really happy to know whether I am likely to get cancer or whether I'm showing early signs of a disease that might be costly later on. But then if you mix that with data on my lifestyle, so you get my Fitbit data or any other application that you use to track how many steps a day you make or what you eat, if you mix your health data with your lifestyle data, that can lead to better prediction of your health in the future and better health, but can also mean higher or lower insurance premiums. And so an insurer or your private insurer or your employer might be very happy to know not only what your physical and health state is, but also what you're doing about it. And if they see that you're eating healthy and exercising, they maybe you have a better chance at getting an insurance or getting a job. The same with smart cards and transport, as I showed you in the image. Sharing information on you and your trips through a smart card can lead to better transport, because the transport authorities know exactly who goes where, when, and so they can plan better in relation to this. But it can also lead to a surveillance state while you are put under surveillance just in case you become a terrorist. And it's not a small detail to notice that the first smart cards in public transport in Europe were introduced in London after the attacks in 2005. And so the goal was not convenience, was not better transport, was better identification and better surveillance of citizens who might show disruptive or suspectful ways of using public transport. So again, you have lots of the impact. The consequences of matching of this data can be different. The same for geolocation and personal information. If you can track someone using their phone, that can be great when there's a catastrophe. I'm sure that if you had a friend or a relative in Paris last night, you would have died to have a tool that would allow you to know exactly where they were in that moment. But that also means that you can be stalked. And how do you get the good from the bad? How do you make sure that information is not used for a purpose that might harm not only your privacy, but also your physical integrity? Or the case of smart meters knowing your location. I don't know what the situation is in Germany, but by 2018, in theory, every household in Europe is supposed to have a smart meter. There was a huge campaign in the Netherlands when they were installed, and some of the consumer groups said, if we all had smart meters in the Second World War, and remember, a smart meter can track your electricity consumption and can know exactly what you plug in and exactly at what minute and second you're making use of what kind of electricity. And so the consumer group said, if we had these smart meters in the Second World War, Anne Frank would not have lasted 2 days in the back of that house that was not known to anyone, because with smart meters, no corner of your house will go unnoticed. If there is electricity, it goes into a map. So again, quite a huge invasion of your privacy in a sphere that you would assume it's just yours. But once there's a smart meter, just like when there's a smart television, your house stopped being your house, and you have all those different eyes being there for different purposes. And I'd like to link this to the issue of identity, because I think that it's something worth reflecting upon. Way back in time, we just had IDs. We were complex human beings that were different, that could change over time. But because we might have the same name as somebody else, the same birth date, the state that needed to relate to all of us decided to give us a number that would only belong to us. And we use that for identification purposes with the state. And in most EU countries, we've had this since we were little. And this is what you use to identify yourself before the state. But outside of that, you continue to be your complex you. There was nobody else trying to give you a number on the scale that the state did, because the state was the only entity that was big enough to need a number and to be unable to relate to you individually, but could only relate to you on the basis of that number. And so for the state, you were reduced to this. You were this number and the things that were associated with this number. But apart from that, you could be yourself in all your complexity. But then that began to change. And so we had bank cards that gave us a number because we had to use money remotely. We wouldn't just have money in our pocket and pay for things, but wanted to have all our wealth available to us at any given time. And so banks said, well, actually, I have to give you a number, because if you want to go places and pay for things, I need to be able to know that I'm relating to you. I cannot relate to you in all your complexity, and so I'll give you a number. And so our ID was complemented by a bank card. And then, because we're in the EU, we wanted to travel between different places, and the EU said, well, actually, you're going to need a EU health card because there's too many of you. There's no way I can know you individually, especially if you travel abroad. And so I need to give you a number because that number will allow me to understand exactly who you are, what health procedures you might be going under in your home country. And so yet another identity, yet another institution that needed to relate to us on the basis of numbers, because that was the only way to deal with our complexity and our numbers. Then shops decided, actually, I need that as well. There's lots of you, and I need to give you a number, to give you discounts, to know who you are, and to put whatever you're consuming under your number so that I can get to know you better. Not really your number, but whatever. Let's keep that. And so we started adding cards to this creation of our card identity. And then came the smartphone. And that was all the cards in one single place, but also being able to capture our complexity. And so with smartphones and with smart media, we've taken a new turn. It's not just our identities being fixed in a number to relate to us better, but now our identity outside of us becomes complex as well. So when I relate to the state, I just had a number, and that number had my tax information. When I relate to a shop with a fidelity card, with a client card, the shop can know what I shopped for, what I live. But with social media and smartphones, all of a sudden, they can also know how I move, what I say, how I feel. And so this second person, this card identity that we had, it's no longer this static thing that doesn't really represent us. An identity card was only a gateway to us. But now what we have is what I call data doubles. There's someone who's just like you, who's made up of your information that lives outside of you. And that's what companies and the state relate to. It's not just a number anymore. It's another you, made up of your data, of your feelings, and how these have been captured by the different algorithms that we come across in our lives. And I think that's quite a significant change, because all of a sudden, your extra you, it's not just a card, it's not just a number, but can actually be used as if it were you. And I think that the implications of that are difficult to understate. What is interesting as well is that every little step we've taken from the ID to social media and smartphones and the construction of the data double, every step of the way, we've been told this is just a technical amendment, a technical improvement. It's just what you did before, but with this small added thing, which actually changes everything. And it's quite interesting how oftentimes the language of technical improvements is used to hide the profound social consequences of the introduction of technology in our lives, which can be great and breakthrough and fantastic, but can also have negative impacts that need to be taken into account. And we need to work to make sure that we minimize that. So the thing about this data this data double, this data shadow that you leave behind you, that comes with you every step of the way, is being used to make decisions. And because it is such a good representation of you, or at least those that buy your online identity, your data double, think that it's such a good representation of you, that they use it to make decisions. And that leads to some risks. And we could go through a long taxonomy of what those risks are. I'll stick to 4, maybe 5. One that we're beginning to see is what I call data despotism. It's the idea that you do everything for the people, with the data of the people, but without the people. So everything for you, with your data double, but without ever talking to you. The idea of data doubles and data as an excuse to remove yourself from citizens. So it's a lot easier for an authority, for a mayor, a president, someone in a position of power, to relate to numbers, to your data doubles, because your data doubles don't go on demonstrations. Your data doubles don't really complain. They're fixed entities that are changed by the algorithm, but are not They don't cause problems, but you may cause problems. So instead of asking you, instead of coming to where you are and finding out how you feel what you're doing, I'll just relate to your data doubles. So I'll just use the Facebook profiles of every person under 18 in my hometown to decide what youth policies should be about. I don't have to go to any meeting with young people anymore where they criticize me. I'll just use their data. And the media will buy that that is really good decision making. That's a really good way of coming up with new programs or strategies, because you are using data, and data is this magnificent thing. But basically what you're doing is using this other you, this data double, which may or may not have anything to do with you, and I'll get to that after, a bit later. Another aspect that worries me is the ability to ask the right questions. Data can give you answers, but the crucial thing is to ask the right questions. And to ask the right questions, you can't use data. You need to use a hypothesis, a complex hypothesis that needs to be made up on the basis of a complex understanding of the problem that you have before you. Data is very good at finding correlation. Data is very bad at finding causation. You need human beings to complement data and make sure that we don't mistake causation for correlation. And I gotta say that this, which sounds like a very reasonable thing to say, it's very much ignored these days when decisions are being made on the basis of data. And everything that the data says is taken as the right answer to a problem that no one ever defined. Another risk that I think it's worth highlighting is the risk of the technological fix. This constant resource to technology as a way to solve social problems without really tackling them. So a technological solution to a problem that we do not want to address. And so we have terrorism, and the answer is always more technology, but without ever going to what the roots of terror might be. And I'm using that example because it's sadly very, very actual. But it's also insecurity is one of these spheres where we find these more and more, that in a way, the recourse to technology is used as an excuse to never go into the deeper roots of the problems that we are addressing. And that is because some of our policymakers are lazy, but also because we buy it. As a society, if a solution involves technology, we think it's better than if it doesn't. As a society, we just love gadgets. And so if any solution comes with a gadget attached, we immediately associate effectiveness and truthness to that solution. So we have a problem with policymakers, but we also have a problem with us as a society, because we just buy those solutions. So I'm sure that if tomorrow in Paris someone said, let's put more CCTV, people are gonna go like, that's a good thing to do, because it shows action. It's something very visual. We've had CCTV forever, and these things continue to happen. Is anyone anywhere gonna ask, what good did CCTV do to us up till now? Where did the technologies we've invested in all these years since 9/11 have done to make us safer? And then let's diagnose the problem and then come up with solutions. But I'm afraid that that's not gonna happen. And it's just amazing how useful technology is to ignore this train of thought, to ignore the need to ask the right questions. Another thing that worries me is this information-based solutionism, this idea that we need data because we've made bad decisions up till now because we didn't have the information. If we had had the information, we would have made the right decisions. And so it's always about information, as if having information always led us to make good decisions. You know that if you don't study for an exam, you're likely to fail the exam. Does that mean you always study more? No. Sometimes you might get lazy. Sometimes something might come up. So you have the information, you know what it takes to pass an exam, but you don't always make the right decisions, even though you have the information. This very small example can be taken to any scale. Do you really think that having more information will lead us to better decisions? Do you really think that it's only about information? If it was only about information, I would say the solution to inequality is just around the corner. To world hunger. We know why people are starving in some parts of our world, because wealth is not properly redistributed. We know. we just choose not to do anything about it. So if we've known so many things up till now and chosen not to do anything about it, what makes us think that from now on, having more information will lead us to make the right decisions? The same impediments that we've had so far to making the right decisions will continue to act, and we will be as unable as we are now to make the right decisions, because we are not rational human beings. We are not a rational species. We don't work like that. There's other things that take place. There's other things that cloud our judgment. And I think those are good things. I think it's a good thing that not everything we do can be predicted because we are not fully rational. But we need to take this into account. And so stop saying that if we had more information, we just make better decisions. And stop justifying surveillance on the basis of the need for more information. As I said, if you want to make better decisions, if you want to solve problems, there's lots of people on rubber boats right now crossing the Mediterranean looking for a safer space in Europe. We know the problem, we have the means, we have the information, but we choose not to act. And when you go to people and tell them that, what assurance do I have that with information you'll make the right decisions that you didn't do before? The response is always the same. I don't want to hear that. That's just too complex. Information will lead us to social heaven. Just believe that, repeat that, turn it into a mantra, and don't bother us with complex questions about the world. There's another thing, the fifth risk, where the experimenting kicks in. Hold on, this mixed here. This is where the online dating kicks in. Because I found that oftentimes when I talked about profiling and organizing society on the basis of profiles and making decisions, algorithmic decisions, it was quite hard for people to understand actually how that worked. And so I scratched my head for several months looking for a real-life example that everyone could relate to about how profiling works. And then I saw an ad on television about a dating site. In this case, it's OkCupid. I'm not sure it's the most popular one, but they were advertising that you could go on their site and take a test. And on the basis of this test, they would tell you who your profile was, and they would match you with the right profile. So I thought, that sounds a lot like what I'm researching at a much simpler scale, but it sounds a lot like what I'm researching in commercial data and policing data. This idea that you give me your information, you answer some questions, and then I put you in this box, and then on the basis of this, the fact that I put you on this box, I make decisions. So I went on the OkCupid. I answered all the questions. There were not that many. I thought it was going to be a lot longer and a lot more complex. It was very easy. And that was the result that I got, which is not the sexiest outcome ever. So this is supposed to be me. I'm supposed to be a deliberate, gentle love dreamer. I didn't see the other profiles, but I'm probably on the sweetest end of the scale. I'm not sure I'm this, but this is what I got, which in itself is quite revealing. Because then you start thinking, was I that on that day? Am I that all the time? Is that really a reflection of me? Because I would have never ever guessed that would have been what I would have gotten out of my love history. But the algorithm decided that on the basis of my answers, this is what I am. And again, that might be me on a super soft day, maybe. But is that me forever? I'm not sure. So when you do this, you get a chance to see your data double and to decide whether you identify with that data double. And that is happening all the time with all the data you produce. Your data double is this image that may or may not be you. The problem is that oftentimes you have no access to the end result of the algorithm. So that's one part that worries me, that we have no access. We don't know who they are using with my name to make decisions on me or on my profile group. But there's another thing that is way more worrying that ties in some of the things that Eugenie Morozov has been exposing for some time, which is that on the basis of this, on the basis of my result, the OkCupid site also told me who was my nemesis, which is like, why would I care? But all of a sudden, not only I was this fixed identity, but I had enemies, like this Genghis Khan woman who looks a lot sexier than me, I gotta admit. But this was supposed to be my nemesis, like, don't get near her because she's the complete opposite of you, which is like, I wasn't really asking for that. I just wanted to know what my dating profile is like. I didn't want to get enemies out of this, but I got enemies out of this. But not only that, I was also told that I should consider the lover boy to date and should always avoid the 5-night stand, the false messiah, the omnivore, and the last man on earth. Those are other profiles for man. So more enemies there, but also a match. So all of a sudden, on the basis of my data double, the machine, the algorithm decided who my friends and enemies were, but also it chose what I should see from now on. And that happens all the time with profiling. It's not only about capturing you, but also about deciding what your options will be from now on. And that is incredibly problematic. And Eugenie talks about this in terms of Google Maps. He says how with Google Maps, you always get a route that resembles the route you've taken before. And so it might look like Google Maps is just telling you the most rational way to get from A to B, and it's not doing that. It's just choosing what you've done before. And so all of a sudden, your choice for routes is reduced. And so the implications of this exercise for your daily life are just amazing. If you have a fidelity card in a supermarket, it's not just that the card decides what yogurts suit you best, but in due time, you'll see how when you walk into the supermarket, only those yogurts will be shown to you. With the excuse of efficiency, your world is reduced to what the algorithm thinks you should want. And all of a sudden, I will never, ever date a 5-night stand profile because the algorithm decided that for me, it's the lover boy or death. And I think that the implications of that are quite crucial. And this is happening all the time. And doing this, you can see it, and it's funny, but it's not funny when it happens behind your back. And it's not funny when you do not know that if the person that you cross next week is the lover boy, it's because someone decided that you should cross paths with the lover boy. Oftentimes, you have no control of what is happening with your data and the decisions that are being made. And this can have quite serious implications. I love to use this example, and I'm sorry for this young woman, but I think it's such a clear example of what can happen when the offline and the online collide. This young woman was chosen to be the first youth officer in a policing department in a small UK town. That was just last year. You know that the UK police have had lots of problems with young people. There's the stop and search and the riots in the summer of 2 years ago. And so this small town decided they wanted to know young people better. And that one way of doing that would be to hire a young person to be part of the police force, to give them access to young people, to get to understand better what their needs might be. And I think that's a really good move. We're going to create a position. We're actually going to pay someone to be part of them, to give them cues on how to relate to young people and how to improve communication. And so they opened the position, and they got lots of CVs, and they interviewed several people, and they chose this woman. So she was the best. Out of all the young people that applied for the job, they went through the CV, her experience, they did the interview, she was the best. After being appointed, the media came up with some tweets that she had written when she was 14 that showed that she would go out at night, that she would get drunk, as most of us do, and she would tweet about it, as any young person would do. All those tweets made it to front page, and she was forced to resign. Actually, she never got on the job, which is quite interesting. How can you be the best candidate offline and the worst candidate online? It also shows how these data doubles, even if it's us typing those letters, even if it's us sharing those statuses, that's not who we are. Who we are is a lot more complex. And when decisions are made only based on our online personas, that can lead to mistakes, like firing someone without giving them a chance to show who they are in the real world. So, what to do? That's what I said. I'm going to end with a good part. There's lots of things that we can and should be doing, and lots of things that are already happening. We should demand better policies. We should demand better technologies. We should demand the private sector for better technologies. We should demand a better protection of our personal data. We should do all that, not only because it's our right, but also because we will not solve these problems on an individual basis. Privacy is not an individual matter. When you download an app that can go through your messages and your list of contacts, you are putting at risk not only your information, but the information of everyone you know. When you befriend someone on Facebook, all of a sudden, your friends have access to other groups of friends. And so it's not just yourself that you're putting at risk. So the answer to the problems that we're facing can never be individual. And that's why I emphasize that we need to force the public and the private sector and the law to protect us better. But until this doesn't happen, while we find ourselves with the level of vulnerability that we have at the moment, I'd say we need to take control. And taking control means getting to know your data double. In the same way that I know that I'm this sonnet romantic thing when in OkCupid, you need to know who you are for any different provider that you deal with. And you can do experiments. Several years ago, when you could still marry people, it's all about dating and getting married anyways. A few years ago, you could marry people on Facebook without their permission. And so I married Jon Stewart from The Daily Show, because I had a soft spot for him. And I could just put Jon Stewart, and all of a sudden I was married to Jon Stewart. You cannot do that anymore. I don't know why. But it was quite interesting, because out of all my updated statuses and everything that happens in my life and my political commitments and my work commitments, I could notice how the only thing that the algorithm registered was that I got married. And so the most significant change that I've ever seen on my Facebook page was when I got married. And so all of a sudden, it was from sell your ovaries to some clinic because you're over 30, you're not married yet, so there's no hope for you. That's what I got before I got married, to weekend breaks with your romantic one, with your loved one. So I could totally see how I was altering my data double, and that led to changes in how the engine and the algorithm related to me. And so when you see that, you are taking control. You are getting a glimpse of who your data double is and what decisions might be made on the basis of that. I also had an op-ed a column in a Spanish newspaper, and they put my column in a blog as well. And the blog had ads, and my blog was mainly about surveillance, and I was very critical of surveillance. But all the ads on my blog were about buy this new CCTV surveillance camera, because the algorithm could see that I was talking about cameras, but could not see that I was being very critical of cameras. So that's how dumb algorithms can be. And that is funny, but it's also worrying when you think that those dumb algorithms are making decisions about you behind your back. So I'd say decide who you want to be. Take control of your data double, decide who you want to be, and then bomb it. Play with it. Just make sure that you give them the information that is beneficial to you, but don't just volunteer personal information in exchange for nothing. Play with your data double. Go on dating sites and pretend to be someone else. Don't give your true birthday. Make up names, emails. Just get to know what it is that you want from them. And I understand that sometimes you might want that fidelity card in the supermarket. No judgment. The best solution would probably be to use Store and ditch your smartphone, never use social media again, but we know that's not going to happen. So while we wait for better policies and better technologies and a better protection of our personal data, let's play with it. Let's play on their weaknesses, and let's make sure that the data society works at least a little bit for us and not just for them. And I'll leave it here. Thank you so much.
It is not. First of all, I want to say I'm totally with you on the whole mentality. I work in this one, right? But I think that what is important is that to educate children and say that it's not necessary to put your life out there and to live in the real world, and that nobody in the end really cares about a tweet whether you went drinking or not. Like you said, everybody does that. But so I think one has to go to the source of why do children go and have the urge to live their life online, and not then say, okay, it is bad that the police said, okay, you can't have the job because, you know, they are representational and they can maybe. So, but what was I going to say? That it's also, it's like an addiction, you know, because it's. I understand what you're saying, but I believe that most people aren't as reflected as you are or we are, and think about that, and they are lazy. They want to be entertained, and the mass is going to be the one that is shaping our future. And if they are lazy and want to have quick entertainment and want to have also attention and reassurance of their life by having a lot of likes or followers or whatever, that's not going to change. And also another thing is you said, because you were talking about we could heal the world hunger, for instance, that we know it, but we don't do anything about it. But that is because there are people in power who have the interest of this not happening because they are making profit. And yet again, big institutions, they are also driven by profit. And so it's you mentioned the ones that are reselling the information, and it's not like anybody forces you to give that information. It is like you're feeding the big institutions because you want that attention. You want that data double to look better than yourself in real life, maybe, and create that. You know, like, have you read something about Sherry Turkle? Do you know her? Yeah, she's researching for 15 years. She did research on how technologies affect our lives, and now she wrote a new book. It's called Alone Together, and she puts light onto exactly the social part of it too. And it's just a lot to get on, but I just wanted to,
Lots of things. I would contest the idea that you're not forced to give out this information. You're not forced in social media, but as I showed in the first image, there's so little of this that you can control. There's no social media here. This is all about sensors that get your information without you being able to say yes or no, without gathering your consent. So I think it's very dangerous to limit the world of surveillance and problems to social media, because then it's where but you should be responsible. And I think that can also be contested. But don't forget that 90% or more of the intakes of information that the system gets are not voluntary, and there's no consent whatsoever. And that's one of the problems, because legally anyone gathering personal information is obliged to get consent. But there's no way you can opt out of being recorded by a CCTV camera in a public space, or there's no way you can opt out from the MAC address in your phone being picked up by one of the towers or sensors. And so it's not really about you. And I think, while I think that we do have a responsibility to get educated about the digital world, and I think that the future generations will know a lot more than we know at the moment as a society, I think it's wrong to put all the responsibility on the person. And I also think it's wrong to put all the responsibility on young people, because I think that none of us have ever experienced the level of pressure that young people have this day and age, with memory becoming compulsory. In my case, I'm 39, so I've had my life tracked willingly for at least 5 years. But for 35 years of my life, I can pretty much reinvent myself. I can make up stories. I can control my identity. Young people cannot do that. Young people have their pictures taken, their information taken and stored from the day they are born. They will never, ever be able to forget any mistakes they made throughout their lives. They will never, ever be able to hide. That profoundly changes not only the nature of identity formation, but also the nature of what being human means, the nature of what living in a city means, the nature of loneliness and the meaning of loneliness. What is being alone when you're sort of surrounded by devices that track what you do? None of us have been exposed to that. And so to go down to young people who have no control, no say on this that is happening around them, but that will have profound implications in their life, say, actually, you should think twice about telling the world that you get drunk when everyone gets drunk. I think it's just unfair. Young people should have a right to make mistakes. Young people should have a right to get drunk and get jobs because all of us do it.
Yeah, I know exactly, but they should maybe not think it's normal to post it and make a thing out of it.
But then why is the young person the problem and not our hypocritical society the problem? Why shouldn't society change and stop assuming that people don't do full things while off work or while working? You know, why put the responsibility on the young person? I mean, I work with young people a lot, and I just think that it's so unfair what we're doing to them and asking them to be way more responsible than we've ever been, when actually being responsible is not a guarantee of anything, because most of the surveillance that they're the victim of is beyond their control. So you might have a young person who never tweets, who never uploads videos on YouTube, but could be on a YouTube video of somebody else, or could have their information tracked by the state. They could be the children of parents that commit fraud, and then their name will be tainted forever. I mean, there's so many things that can happen, even if they are the most responsible human beings, that I don't think it's fair to tell them you are the problem.
No, I'm not saying they are the problem, but the problem is that we do not educate them also of the consequences of their online activity.
I would say they're more educated than us. All the surveys show that young people are more aware and you play with their privacy settings a lot more than us. And also there's a change. There's a generation between 20 and 30, who are now between 20 and 30, who tended to be a bit more, take more risks than older people. But those that are under 20 are taking more precaution than older young adults, like people over 20, because they're seeing their siblings, their older brothers and sisters, paying a high price for not bearing that in mind. And so we are seeing, and the surveys show, you just go and check the Pew Research Center, they published a survey not long ago when they said there was a massive change in people under 20 who are seeing the impact of not caring about the information you put out there on older people, and thus realizing, actually, do I really want to have that profile? Do I really want to say that on Twitter? And so they're thinking about it twice, and they're thinking about it a lot more than us in our 30s and 40s.
Jennifer, I think you had
Yeah, thanks for your talk. I would like you to reflect a bit on the choice of using data doubles, because I think what we call what is happening has shaped how we materialize what a data double is as a discrete object that we can interact with that has sort of person-like status. And I don't necessarily think that that's what corporations are getting. It's like your data double that looks like you, acts like you, has all of your things, and instead they're getting sort of these amorphous databases, right? And so if you conceptualize this as a data double, that necessarily shapes how we think that we should curate our data double and respond to sort of corporate retention policies. But if the fact is that the databases that they're using are not using discrete person-like objects, then we're trying to fight a specter that isn't there, right? And so like Deborah Lupton has started calling them sort of companion species, and I'm not sure if I agree with that either, but you know, something that we need to feed but has its own agency that we live along with. And so yeah, I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Corporations are not interested in our individual data double, but our data double feeds a large image of a person that does not exist, but who is made of who we all are. And that's what a profile is. It's millions of people, thousands of people, depends on how big the database is. So you get how many people in this database have shopped at this particular store in the last year. How many of these people have had a health problem in the last 5 years? And so you get different cues that the companies curate. And so they decide who goes where. And they come up with a profile. And the profile is very much like the online dating profile. It's like these people are more likely to be vulnerable to this kind of advertising, for instance, or these people, their financial capacity is between this bracket and this other bracket. And so you do have a curated agglomeration of data doubles that make those profiles. So I do think that it's not such an abstract process. And so can you curate who you are? Yes. Can you harm the corporations and the data brokers that do that? Probably not very much if this is not being done on a massive scale. But if lots of people start lying about their information, then the raw data that they get is useless and their value will diminish. And so it is one of the strategies that could work while we wait for better policies and technologies and all the things that I said before. Not convinced. we can follow it up later.
I think there's another question over there.
Yeah, I'm just struggling with the term of data doubling because how can I lie about my data if there is no me, or if there what is an identity at all? Because who say that I'm that tall, that I'm which color my hair is? Who does that say? And which institutions or who's actually defining what my identity is about, and how can I say that that's not me, but that's me, and what is... I think I totally agree with you that we have to play with this, that we have to create more data, and that we have to bringing more identities in the whole system to play with it and to, I don't know, maybe confuse it all. But I don't understand this point of I'm lying with my data, because if I'm have an email address with Jenny Pfeiffer, for example, I'm Jenny Pfeiffer. So, and I think I don't know what my identity is about, and maybe I'm just here and have an identity, and then I'm on another place and I have another identity. And of course there is a history between this, but yeah, I don't know what this kind of the real human and the data double is. Is there a difference, or yeah?
There's lots of differences. My main point is control. You can control who you are, however changing and complex that is, but you can control how you present yourself before others. You cannot control how others perceive you, however. There's always limits to that control that you have. But when the data double escapes you, when you don't see it, when you don't know the algorithm, when you don't know what kind of information they're processing and what information they're leaving behind, it just becomes this separate entity. And that's what I find is risky, because decisions are being made on the basis of this. It's not just this thing that sits out there. Some people are making decisions that will affect your life on the basis of that thing that has been made up of your data. And so I think that you should care, and I don't think that information overdose is a solution, because we already have information overdose. And in terms of how can you lie, it's very easy. But that's why you need to understand the system.
Is there a lie? I mean, how can I lie? I mean, I lie when I say my name is I don't know. Is it a lie? Is it a lie when my parents give me a name? Is that a lie, or is it the real name? I don't know. Where's the lie and where's the truth?
But it's about what you decide. But that's the thing. In your data double, you're not allowed to make decisions anymore, because you fix your identity the moment that piece of data was processed. And so you need to understand who you're relating to. So you can lie on lots of things. Just try to understand who your adversary is. There's a very useful concept from computer science, which is your threat model. Try to understand what your threat model is, and then adapt to that and react to that. So, very simple thing. If you go to, you go to IKEA, you go to a shop, and you do want those offers, because you cannot. Those €5 down on the table will change your life. I totally understand you want to do that, but then you want that discount, right? So you want to access the card to get a discount. Then try to understand how the discount happens. Does that mean they send something to your house? They send you a voucher? Does that mean that they just give you a card and the person that goes with that card to the shop will have access to that discount? And on the basis of that, make decisions. If you want a voucher sent home, then the only piece of true information that you need to provide them is your home address. Everything else can be fake. If the information that they need is just to provide you with a card that then can be used by you, your mom, your partner, whoever, then you can lie on all the data, because all you want is from them to come up with a card. And it's this kind of knowledge of who you're dealing with that will make you be able to decide, actually, I want something from you, and I'm willing to give you something in return, but only in relation to the gain that I get. And we make those decisions all the time. Every time we buy something, we are calculating, okay, how much good this will bring to my life, how much am I spending, how much time will it take me to get to that shop. So we make those kind of complex decisions all the time. And for some reason, with digital stuff, we want things so simple that we just give it all up, which makes no sense, because basically, in the end, you're paying twice for that thing that you're getting. And that's, I think, that the idea that should stick with us, that paying with data is like paying with money. You're paying with something that is valuable. But until we have that kind of image in our head, just try to understand what do you want to get from them and give them just the amount of information that they need to provide you with that. I have lots of catalogs and things come to my house under the name of politicians. I mean, that's the thing. It can be a game. You know, it's not, that's the lazy thing to do. The hard thing to do is to use store, to not use a smartphone, to give up on social media. That's a hard thing to do. And I don't think we can ask people to do that, because I don't think most people will do that. But the lazy thing to do is just to lie on your data, understand what you want to get out of them, and turn it into a game. Like I go to an airport. I never sign up on the wireless with my name. I know they'll get my true MAC address. So that's enough. You know, they don't need to know my name and my email address, the country that I come from, my age, to get access to Wi-Fi. Please. So just don't give it to them, because you'll get Wi-Fi anyway. I mean, that's the thing. You know them, play with them, and turn it into a game.
I would suggest we continue with the discussion in lunch break. We're slightly behind the time. There was one last remark by Alex, who unfortunately has to leave us soon, so please.
Well, two small remarks. One, concerning the relationship, my relationship to the so-called double W data U. I think that the data U, when you look at it, and if you create an identity like you did, the scary thing about it is that it's not totally alien to me, but that it has some point of effectiveness to my life. For example, if you talk to people two couples who met each other on the internet, they often tell you it was very, very well done by the algorithms. So we match our interests and it works. So that what makes it really that's something that makes the relationship much more complicated of identifying it, and because it's so effective it can be effective for our lives. And the second remark concerns the loneliness of young people, because paradoxically, the internet has been the place to be lonely for a long time for young people, because the ground where they used to be lonely, or where young people used to be on their own, like in the 80s, throw the school bag away and go into the field and be with your peer group, is gone, because your parents can track you everywhere. They can call you anytime, even in the play yard, in the schoolyard. So now this area is also taken away from them. So yeah, that makes it interesting. The question: where is the next place, the next space to be without the supervision? Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. And we will continue at 2:30 with a lecture by Manfred Schneider on the paradoxes of concurrency. See you in lunch break. Thanks, Gemma, again.
Thank you.